you think lawsuits are the answer to stop some of this stuff? I'm also realizing right now that our runway to fix this is becoming perilously short. Like, we're getting to the abyss pretty damn quick. The 2020 election is right around the corner, and that seems to me to be what this is all ramping up to.
Absolutely. The Covington case was such a glaring example of that. So I was on vacation in Mexico.
Yeah, okay, so let's just go all in on Covington right now. Yeah.
So it was a little town north of Puerto Vallarta. I was just hanging out, just going through Twitter, and I
poor son of a bitch, try on Twitter on vacation.
Exactly. I was just, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And so I see Maggie Haberman, the premier reporter for the premier news publication in the country, covering American politics.
New York Times, yeah.
Exactly. Basically calling for the expulsion of a bunch of kids that she's never met, that she doesn't know, based on an event she didn't see. And I found that so shocking. I was like, we're crossing a whole new line now. If we're going to go, it's one thing to go after what somebody said 10 years ago. That's problematic on its own terms.
We'll get to that in a little bit too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what we have statutes of limitations for. But is that you're not going to be held responsible for what you did when you're 10, or when you're 20, when you're 40. But here these kids who were just going up to D.C. to be part of the pro-life march. And usually the pro-life march, I've had family participate in that. They're just having fun. They're not mean. They're not out there harassing people. They're just expressing what they believe. These kids are having fun, probably their first time ever to Washington, D.C. They're by the Lincoln Memorial, this beautiful memorial, and all of a sudden they start getting harassed out of the blue. And they have likely never met the Black Hebrew Israelites, right? Some of us that have know what's coming.
I lived in New York City for many years. I've been yelled at by these guys many times. Yeah.
Every insult known to man. It's like really, they're almost like an insult comic. I mean, the routine is so extreme. It's like they find something, they go the next thing, the next thing, the next thing.
They're like bad Don Rickles, basically.
Oh, exactly. The worst version, right? It's like you combine Farrakhan with Don Rickles, right? So, but these kids have no idea. And they have an African-American friend that's there with them, and he's being attacked. And so they start defending him. They start attacking, making various anti-gay slurs. They respond back to that in defense of people who are gay. Yeah. So it's like, these are not mean kids. These are kids trying to handle a shocking environment. They decide to go internal and start, okay, let's not deal with these guys. Let's start do our school cheers. One of their school cheers is the old haiku, is the haiku dance, which is the great New Zealand rugby team, all blacks. Yeah. In fact, 2 weeks before, I'd shown it to my son because I was like, "Look at how awesome this is!"
No, it's awesome. It's all over YouTube, by the way. Anyone can watch it.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's when I first saw it in the movie with Matt Damon. I was like, that's the greatest sports dance I've ever seen. Yeah. So in fact, before, if I want to get inspired by something, I'll just put it on and go and get ready. Yeah. So they do that as part of it. That's why when the kid's tearing his clothes off, and it's right after that's happening that all of a sudden a Native American comes up with some friends and he's doing the drums. So 2/3 of the kids think, oh, he's joining in because we just did the haiku thing. Oh, this is great. And what do they know? The most popular Native American sports thing they know is the tomahawk chop. Yeah. From the Florida State, from Kansas City Chiefs,
Cleveland Indians,
Atlanta Braves, all the places where they're familiar. I mean, there's right on the border of the Kentucky-Ohio border. So the kind of programs they'd be familiar with, that's what they see. Nobody's mocking him. Nobody's chanting "Build the Wall" at him. Nobody's blocking him. Nobody's surrounding him. And then at one point some of the kids start to figure out, okay, something's odd because some of the people behind him are saying, "Go back to Europe," and it's like, well, where did that come from? And then they realize something's weird, and then they just leave. And then as they're on their bus home, all of a sudden their lives are being upended. And they're not being upended by just some random bot account who started. They're being upended by Kathy Griffin, who's calling for them to be doxxed. They're upended by Maggie Haberman, calling for them to be expelled. They're upended by Matthew Dowd, who's on ABC, who's a prominent Catholic on ABC, saying bad things need to happen to these kids. And a Navarro who's saying bad things need to happen to these kids. Almost the entire media, and then you have Hollywood celebrities calling for them to be put through the shredder, for them to be attacked, for them to be, you had a writer who claimed to be part of Saturday Night Live say she was going to extend sexual favors for anybody who physically assaulted these people. And I was like, these are private kids.
These are, by the way, these are blue check verified people. These are not fake accounts.
These are the people that Twitter
legit.
says you should pay attention to, that we've verified, that we've validated, that we've authenticated, that we've authorized. And Twitter and social media does almost nothing about this. In fact, they run with the fake news story. And these kids' lives are almost over in 5 seconds based on a misleading video. And so I saw it, and when I first saw the video, I was like, oh, that's going to be a fake news story. Just because DC politics. You know lefty protest culture. The chances that a bunch of Catholic kids came up and found a lefty to harass is not real high in Washington, D.C. If they had said it happened in a small town in Alabama, okay, maybe. But I was like, this story doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, that will probably blow over. And that was while I was getting on a plane to go to Bucerias. Then I get to Bucerias and see these things, and I'm like, they're going to destroy these kids' lives? And I realized if they can do this, they can do anything to anyone, anytime, anywhere.
And that's exactly, so then you started tweeting about it alongside a couple other people, and I thought, a couple other people in the legal world, and I thought, all right, I've got to talk to this guy, because if this one doesn't get corrected, which fortunately, thanks to you, and it's ongoing, you and several other people, it is getting corrected, but I thought if this one doesn't get corrected, if we let them demolish high school students, we're done.
Exactly.
We are done. So can you catch us up on sort of where this is all at now?
So what I did initially is I first just put out a tweet that said, if anybody wants to sue Maggie Haberman, I'll represent them for free. And I was just agitated. I was just ticked off. And I didn't tune into Twitter until like 2 days later when I came back. And all of a sudden it blown up, and I'm getting all these inquiries, and I'm like, okay, I realize that this is becoming very high profile. And so I go on Fox, and my goal is to get everybody to start to retract, start to back up, start to retell a different story. And unfortunately, almost all the institutional media starts to backtrack fast.
So to be clear, you did not want to go the legal route, actually. You were giving everybody, I mean, I saw you do this. You gave them the chance. Guys, just delete the tweets. Did you even ask them to issue apologies? I don't even remember that specifically.
All I said was, I said that everybody's got 48 hours to do one of three things. Either correct, or delete, or apologize. Just do something to correct the record. And I mean, to her credit, Congresswoman Omar, who usually has no problem saying anything under God's green earth, she did. She did it within an hour. But she only did it because roll call covered my story. As soon as roll call covered my story, it's like, oh, maybe I can get sued, and took it down.
Yeah, and by the way, right before that, she had sent out a tweet linking them to white supremacists and a whole bunch of other stuff.
And a whole bunch of false information. She libeled them in whole new unique ways. Leave it to her to figure out a way to do that.
This is a member of Congress, by the way.
Then you have Senator Warren, who's running for the presidency of the United States, repeating false statements about these kids.
Well, that's because she's Native American.
So. Yes, exactly. She has to stand up for her tribe. They portrayed him as a Native American elder. Well, I clerked for Native American tribes. I worked for one of these old school lefty, one of the best tribal lawyers in the country. And I was like, I don't think he's an elder of that particular tribe. Then I realized they were just confusing the terms. Because he's elderly, they were going to call him an elder. I was like, that's an insult to all the. I mean, most Native American elders are very carefully selected. They take their job very seriously. In fact, their court system, if we had an ideal court system in the world, it would be the Native American elder system. I'd be all for it. Because there's 12 people sit around, you come in, you tell them your dispute, and they try to find a remedy that will satisfy everybody. And they try not to be too punitive. They try not to be too involved. They just try to say, okay, what's caused this problem? How can we address the cause of it? And they're focused on reconciliation. How can we bring people together so it doesn't happen again, and people don't feel bad at the end of it?
Not great for your profession, but that's...
Exactly, but a much better system. I'd be all for it. I'd happily forfeit my law degree to see that system put in place. Have the 12 members of your community get to decide these kind of disputes and find ways to put people back together and protect all the things that matter to us, rather than deepening the division and the bitterness that exists. And the legal system often creates that. People often leave it, even when they win, unsatisfied. And so so they put this guy in that context, just like he was a Vietnam War veteran, was really not really being accurate. They're trying to script a narrative, trying to tell a story, but doing it to these kids. And clearly the message was, if we can destroy them, we can destroy you. It was an ultimate exemplar mechanism of media narrative structuring. And that's why I volunteered to help them out. And so now I represent 14 families in Covington. About 90% of the people, I went on Fox and said, 48 hours notice, just clean it up and we'll be done. And even after that, I've given people additional opportunities. Please take it down, please correct. None of the family members want to sue. They don't want to deal with the nightmares of the legal system. They don't have to go through all that hassle or hurdle. But they want the record corrected, and they don't want it to happen to anyone else. That's it. And so I was like, let's set a record, let's set a pattern, let's set a precedent here that this can get corrected and remedied, that you can't do this to these kids, you can't do this to these people, that you do have standards, you have to be bound by those standards, you have to be governed by those standards, and you have to act according to those standards. For those that refuse to do anything about it, they're going to be sued.
Yeah, so some of them still left the tweets up or didn't apologize.
Kathy Griffin, Matthew Dowd, oddly enough, Maggie Haberman, Senator Warren, Congresswoman Howland. Those are the 5 highest profile examples of people who refuse to correct.
When you see a mob descend, it's a little hard to figure out how coordinated it is, whether it's groupthink, is this coming from the top, is this organic? As much as you've had to deal with these things, and especially since you dealt with the most recent one that's still unfolding right now, what's your take? Is it a little bit of everything?
It's two different things. One is they've started to green light mob culture. That's what was scary here, because this started out with a bot account who was spreading it through sort of liberal ideological culture, who was trying to create an online mob. But the reality is that online mob would have never reached critical mass, at least as it related to these kids, without the blue checkmark crowd saying, yay, yay, yay. And that's the problem. They're the green light for online mob behavior. And that's why they have to be stopped, and they have to correct their actions, or they have to be remedied in court, because they are the ones that are permitting it and expanding it. And for them, I don't know how often it's deliberate and how often it's a cultural mindset. I used to call it cotton ball culture. So in the South, people used to go to the cotton ball. They're part of the privileged classes when they're 16 and 17, and they're sort of incorporated and acculturated to a certain mindset. So it's not that they all get together and conspire, but that they have a certain point of view that's been created by the culture they shared. And I think there's some of the online mob culture that's been festering over the past decade. And the worst part of it is it continued to be green light by institutional people, or people with big platforms and big power.
Are you shocked also how the racial element has become so blatant? So it was like, these kids are white, so they have punchable faces, or excusing the black Israelites because they're black, so they can call these kids faggots, and that's okay, even though you're supposed to defend gay people. But I guess if it's black people, they create the Suppression Olympics.
The intersectional charge.
Yeah, this intersectional lunacy. So are you just shocked how solidified that is in so many people's brains?
Well, it's extraordinary for like two different reasons. One, whenever I see people do it or raise it, my instinctual view is I was like, well, what has that person actually done for civil rights? So like when I've been attacked, I'm like, well, I've done civil rights for 20 years. I've done very difficult cases in very difficult places advocating for civil rights. So I was like, is this a person really out there trying to help protect people? Or is it somebody who wants a social brownie point and social prestige point for being on the right political side? And that's 95% of them. These are people that aren't actually doing anything to improve the well-being of African Americans and Latinos in this country. The second part of it is, it's become social prestige to out people that are a particular disfavored political class. And it happens to be that right now our disfavored political classes are white people, are men, are people of certain sort of parts of the country, certain political orientation.
Kids wearing MAGA hats.
Exactly. I was like, that's the same sort of bigotry. The bigotry doesn't know color. Bigotry is bigotry. And this is just racial bigotry disguised as trying to protect people. They're not out to protect people. They're out to hurt and harm people, and they just want to feel morally justified when they do it.
So when you now have to move forward on this lawsuit that you're saying you're going into, not really because you want to, you're giving these people a chance to go out. How does this even work logistically when you're going after people that have nothing to do with each other other than they all did it on the same platform?
So we're going to bring it as a class claim. So all the plaintiffs will be combined. So all 14 kids will be one group of plaintiffs, and all the defendants will be combined. So so you can combine the defendants together when there's a common nucleus of facts and they're behaving in a coordinated way, even if it doesn't rise to the level of, say, legal conspiracy or aiding and abetting, which it may in some of these instances. The effect of it is you can add them together because for judicial economy purposes, they're all part of the same event, and it's easier for one judge to preside over all the cases combined than the cases differently. And so it's interesting, some of the left media's use of these kind of defamation claims has used this exact procedure. And it's time to use the exact procedure back the other way.
You got to be careful what you wish for, huh?
Exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about what's going on with Tucker Carlson right now. Now, Tucker's been on this show. I go on his show every couple weeks. I find him to be a decent guy. We have political disagreements that we have expressed to each other publicly before, but I think he's on the right side, especially when it comes to the free speech stuff. Now, Media Matters, which you mentioned already, they're going after him. They're finding old audio clips on a shock jock, Bubba, what's his name? Bubba Gump, Bubba, something, Bubba.
I know it's got Bubba in it. Bubba the something in it.
Whatever it is. But in effect, a Howard Stern-like figure.
Exactly.
Where I was thinking, I tweeted something the other day that I wish Howard Stern was maybe a little more engaged these days than he is. I don't begrudge him. He's lived through a lot, and he's had to he's been a great fighter on our side of the free speech thing. But it's like, if he was to take the 30 years of stuff that politicians, actors, comedians, authors, musicians, everybody has said, the crazy sexual acts that have been done in that studio, all those things, and said, you know what? This is all part of life. We all say things, we get in atmospheres where you joke differently this way than you would that way.
Exactly.
All of these things, like, I would love to have him aiding us right now in this fight.
Agreed.
So that's just one piece of this. But putting that aside, Media Matters is now digging into old things of Tucker's, and apparently he said faggot. There were a couple other things, and they're trying to make it sound like he's racist and he's for abusing kids and all of these things.
Yes.
And I wonder what his legal recourse is. Now, he's not apologizing. That's one thing, which I think that's pretty good for if you're going to stand against the mob, don't apologize.
Yep.
But also, because their goal is just to destroy this man. Their goal isn't some sort of legal justice, right? Their goal isn't to help anyone.
Exactly.
Right? Unless there's doing something that I can't figure out. Their goal is to destroy a man. And if you can destroy a man, you can destroy an idea, and you can get all sorts of other people to shut up. So
Precisely.
What the hell do we do?
It's very much a censorship shaming campaign designed to marginalize his audience and marginalize him from having access to his audience, and to be an example to future people so that they won't, hey, you better not come after big tech, which is really what distinguishes Tucker from anyone else on Fox or anyone else in the political conservative space. He's probably the lead high-profile person taking on big tech in this country. One of the leading guys saying...
I think you're telling me I should have you on retainer. Is that where?
Exactly. Well, that's what's happening. It's systematic, it's institutional, and it's deliberate, and it's obvious. So, like, I first got familiar with this aspect of it in the context of representing Alex Jones, because I was trying to figure out, why do people think he said a bunch of stuff that he actually didn't say, or did things that he actually didn't do, or think 90% of what he said was this as opposed to that. And then I found out watching Joe Rogan that it was actually a Media Matters thing that Joe Rogan himself watched. He's like, oh no, I saw this Media Matters thing. It's like, who would trust Media Matters? It's like they're politically motivated, they're partisan oriented, they take various forms of, like, people complain about secret corporate cash and dark money. Media Matters has tons of secret corporate cash and dark money.
Is that a big problem right here, that the nonprofits now are probably, I don't know all the laws related to nonprofits, but they're probably in almost every political case stepping beyond their boundaries?
They definitely are. And then what's happening is they're partisan organizations. So here you have, nobody would think Media Matters is nonpartisan.
I'm pretty sure they didn't go after Joy Reid on cable news when her whole thing went down about the anti-gay blog posts.
Exactly. They've defended all kinds of people on the left who've said all far worse things, and at least are politically, ideologically aligned with the left, are supposed to be in the first instance. And this is the left set of standards, that something you say 20 years ago somehow means you can never have a public platform ever again for the rest of your human existence. This is not an American standard. This is not a conservative standard. This is very much a left standard. But they don't apply it to their own people, ever, at all. I mean, some of the things Joe Biden has said over the years.
Yeah.
And he's the leading Democratic candidate for the presidency. And then that guy opened his mouth and crazy stuff came out.
Well, half the things that Trump says now, although he says them sloppily, are the exact same things that Obama said about immigration, and Clinton said about immigration, and Dianne Feinstein and the rest of them.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So it's extraordinary for the sort of one-sided application. But clearly Tucker's a target because Tucker's willing to take on big tech. And the goal is they're testing, when can we use something in the person's past? Because what's extraordinary about all of this, what unites all of it, whether it's the Covington case or the Alex Jones case, is that you have people who are unwilling to debate ideas. It's all about, if you disagree with them, then they're going to target you as an individual. They're going to make your life difficult as an individual. They're going to harass you as an individual, stalk you as an individual.
They've already been to Tucker's house, by the way.
Precisely. When his wife was there and had no clue what was going on, and they're banging on the door. And that was the reason why Fox went off Twitter for an extended time period, because Twitter would do nothing about it. I mean, the extraordinary discrepancy and disparity everybody can witness. And people like Tim Pool, who's on the left, can say, this is problematic. This is kind of obvious what you guys are doing. And recognize how problematic it is, because they're not going to stop there. It's like Alex Jones. They're not going to stop with Alex Jones. They're going to use it as an example to try to go after everyone else, to scare and intimidate everyone else. You better not be in the independent press. You better not be in the independent speech. You better not be sharing a dissonant narrative, or we're going to be able to demonetize you, deplatform you, debank you, or defame you routinely and regularly and get away with it. And that's why we need to equalize the playing field. But for Tucker's case, what he could do is he could potentially go after Media Matters for misrepresenting or mischaracterizing the set of events. They have a habit of putting out a video that decontextualizes what happened. They did it to Alex Jones. They would take him where he's talking about this subject, put in a minute where it looks like he's talking about Sandy Hook and he's actually not. He's talking about something else. And they would say these are all of his statements. So they've likely done the same thing to him. But there's limited remedies.
I also saw I think it was one of the directors of Media Matters. I actually retweeted it saying, if you think this is bad, we've got a lot more, or something to that effect. And I thought, they're telling you how evil they are, because they're saying we are releasing this information in a calculated way to destroy a man. We're not just doing it for public good, like we found all this stuff and we're just going to put it all out there on day one because people should know about his past. It's like we're going to keep the monster being fed so that it can keep feeding on.
Correct. And it's why are they so scared of ideas? If they think Tucker's wrong on ideas, debate his ideas. Why attack him? Especially why attack him on something he said 20 years ago on a shock jock show?
There's also something crazy you could do. You could actually pick up the remote. You're not going to believe this. There's a button on that thing that allows you to scroll up or down. Have you seen this thing?
Exactly. I mean, if you don't like what you're hearing, you don't have to listen to it. If you think it's wrong, you should engage it. Years ago, Professor Lash, great historian, passed away some years ago. He said the reason why we expose our ideas and debate other people isn't necessarily to persuade them. It's because they're going to expose ideas that their weaknesses in our own argument. And we often research a topic. When somebody says, and we go like, oh, that must be wrong, and we go and find out about it. We become more informed by engaging in the public debate process. And that's good, that's healthy. But these are people who fundamentally don't believe in free thought, free expression, and free speech. Fundamentally, they believe that you should have the right thought, not that you should have free thought. You should have the right expression, not that you should have free expression. They have combined sort of the Inquisitional Catholic Church with like 1920s communists. And they've integrated the two in their approach, and they're using our legal system and using our political system and their superior power in the cultural areas of influence, whether it's Hollywood, whether it's big media, whether it's big tech, to suppress and oppress those people who have different or dissident views than them, including people on parts of the left. So, I mean, people like Tim Pool is being called a Nazi just because he appears on Joe Rogan and asks a few questions at Twitter. I mean, this is insanity.
So that's actually, I was going to go somewhere else, but let's jump there for a second. So, like, for example, when I had Tim Pool on last week, there were verified people on Twitter calling Tim a Nazi and me a fascist, or me a Nazi and Tim a fascist. I've mentioned this before. I've had I grew up around Holocaust survivors. I lost family on both my mom and my dad's side. Now, again, I'm the free speech guy, so I don't want to sue these people. But is there some legal remedy for this, if I was someone different than I am?
Correct. Yeah, there is. Because, for example, I took a couple of years ago the Cassandra Fairbanks case against Emma Roller. And one of the reasons I took it is
Cassandra, former lefty, by the way.
Absolutely.
She's now all Trump, but former lefty. I had drinks with her one night. She gave me her full-on lefty. Yeah.
Exactly. Part Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
And she was accused by Emma Roller of flashing a white power gesture. And this was the universal okay sign. Somehow this became a white power. And I was like, what the? So she was on Twitter and she's like, I got to stop this. Can somebody help me? And I said, I'll help for free, because I liked the area of the case and thought needed to stop this. Because they're used to being able to say, I'll call someone a Nazi, I'll call someone a racist, and that's not actionable at law. And I wanted to change that. I wanted to say, when you make very specific statements about someone's belief structure that someone can interpret and a jury can objectively verify as either true or false, that I think that should be something you can sue over. So I brought the case in D.C., and we couldn't meet the actual malice standard, but the court said yes. Saying someone is a racist in a particular way, like saying it's a white power gesture, you can be sued for in the United States for libel and lies, and under the defamation laws of D.C., which are more restrictive than a lot of other laws. So that's established the standards that all these people think, I can just say anything and never get sued. That's what we're going to make the point in the Covington case. No, you can't. If you say things that you know not to be true, that a jury can look at and say, I can objectively verify this. The juries make determinations about whether someone is involved in a hate crime every day. They make determinations whether someone has racially discriminatory animus or motivation every day. So if someone's accusing you of being a racist, that should be actionable in law, because a jury can make that determination as a matter of objective fact. And the Fairbanks case establishes precedent that you can, under certain circumstances, get legal remedy for that kind of thing.
It will never cease to amaze me that the free speech crew are the people that have to do certain things through law.
Exactly.
Just to maintain maintain free speech, which
Precisely.
it sounds so counterintuitive, but it's so fascinating to me. So a couple times you've mentioned Fox. I think there's something interesting happening here. Now, has CNN or MSNBC ever put you on?
No.
Have they ever asked you to come on?
CNN did way back about 2 years ago.
Okay, so CNN did 2 years ago. MSNBC has not. Fox puts you on.
Correct.
Now Fox only puts me on, and they put me on with no. I go on live shows. They don't tell me to say anything.
Right.
I can say whatever the hell I want. I often bring up liberal cred while I'm on there.
Yep.
But it seems also clear to me that partly what's going on with the Tucker thing is that they are really going for Fox. The plan is, all right, we'll take out Tucker. He's sort of the bravest or the most outspoken or whatever it is. But really then we'll make this about going for Fox's licensing and broadcast abilities and everything else.
Exactly.
You're nodding, so I suspect you agree with me. But I'm amazed because it's like there is so much lefty media. And you never saw the right trying to destroy all the lefty media. There's basically one Fox. And it doesn't mean I love everything they're doing. I don't. But you need some counterbalance, don't you?
Absolutely. If you have the approach of the Inquisitional Catholic Church or institutional communism of a statist variety, then what drives you crazy is the heresy. So you don't look at it and say, geez, how many fair, balanced expressions do we have on both sides? To the Inquisitional Catholic Church, there's only the Catholic Church perspective, and everybody else needs to be burned at the stake. For the statist communists, same dynamic. There's one state channel, there's no alternative state channel, there's no anti-state channel. So when you come in from that perspective, what unites, say, Alex Jones, the Covington case, and Fox, is these are three institutions, and they represent different institutions that are giving an independent narrative. So when I was at Yale, we did a history project that was actually about why African Americans and poor whites in the South were often treated or portrayed in very discriminatory ways in cultural medium between 1900 and 1970. And what you find is that historically those communities have alternative narratives. Their grandparents and parents tell stories different than, say, the civics book version they learn in third grade in public school. And so consequently, those groups were often shamed and censored and portrayed in a negative light so that the broader public audience wouldn't trust them to listen to them or react to them. So the same thing is here. Like you look at the Covington kids, they represent private Catholic education. What is private Catholic education? It's one of the last institutions of independent thought compared to, say, all the public state schools and public institutions. So it drives them crazy that they represent this institution that they can't control their thoughts and mind of because they don't have access to that institution.
And then you even saw in the midst of all this, I'm sure you saw this, there was that guy from the New York Times who said, I want to know your stories. Remember, I forget what the hashtag he used was, but he wanted to know your Catholic, it was like hashtag Catholic school stories.
Precisely.
Because now New York Times, let's go after them once we're done with this thing. So,
let's go after the whole Catholic Church. Let's go after the Catholic schools because we need people to be afraid to be a part of those schools, to be ashamed if they're connected to those schools. Parents worried that if those schools are listed on their kids' CV, their kids' futures will be impaired, and not have these schools being independent sources of thought outside of the sort of cultural liberal hegemonic view. And the same thing is true, like Alex Jones represents sort of an independent part of the press. Fox News represents an institutional part of the press that's independent, that expresses its own perspective, that's not part of the left majority. I mean, CNN and MSNBC and ABC and NBC and CBS, even though they're using public airwaves, are overwhelmingly on one side.
Yeah.
Same with PBS, same with NPR. And there's a lot of good value, and I watch all of them at different times or listen to them at different times. But I want the other side expressed. And so it's this fear of free expression, this fear of free speech that's leading to these censorship campaigns, these shame campaigns, these targeting campaigns, these privacy invasion campaigns. What I've told people is if you're ever to the point where you're attacking a person or trying to shame a person, trying to censor a person, trying to invade their privacy, then what you're really doing is you're looking in the mirror and telling yourself, I've failed on the argument. Yeah. I can't persuade on ideas. No audience would actually believe my ideas. So it's an admission of failure. And they're really resorting to these extreme tactics because they're recognizing they're losing in the public debate.
Do you think part of it also is that it's intentional, now perhaps they're losing in the public debate. I think that's probably, you could debate that either way. Sure. On one hand, I'm very enthused about sort of where we're at in this. On the other hand, it's very scary too because you see this socialist, whatever the hell that is, thing rising. So, but putting that aside, do you think part of it is that they're doing it intentionally because they just want to basically sow chaos all over the place. That partly what they need for whatever their political goals are is they need this system that has been pretty freaking spectacular for 200 plus years to appear chaotic. So they what do? They sow chaos.
What's amazing is how parallel it is to 1920 street violence in Europe. So you see, like, a lot of the communist tactics that were used back then and the fascist tactics that were used back then were designed to sow distrust in the system, sow distrust in the institutions.
And that's it.
Protected people.
That's it. Every day now, AOC doing another thing about how evil we are and Reagan's evil and capitalism
to get people to hate themselves.
And Omar, yeah.
I think like the combination you're talking about, where there's these bad ideas that are spreading and yet winning in the public debate, what unites them is if both sides get presented, most people will take a humanitarian decision, will make a good choice based on their common experience and their common sense. And so that's why this side that wants to spread their ideas knows they can't allow that open, fair debate to happen or those institutions to be trusted and protected and respected. If they can get people to no longer, to not listen, to not hear independent voices, to be afraid to be a part of independent institutions, to feel ashamed if they're connected to it, to say, hey, if I'm a lawyer, I represent this person, I'm going to be attacked. If I'm in the public arena and I voice an independent view, I'm going to be targeted and harassed and stalked and the rest. They want people to be scared and intimidated to express their ideas because I think they know that in a non-chaotic, open debate structure, they don't win. And I think that's what they're reckoning, because otherwise you don't have to resort to these ridiculous tactics and techniques. If your ideas are great and popular, you don't have to use chaotic techniques. You don't have to try to censor people. You don't have to attack people. You don't have to say, what did Tucker say 20 years ago on a shock jock show? You can say, hey, I disagree with what he said yesterday on Fox, and I'm willing to debate him. And Tucker's one of the few people who says, hey, you can come on the show and we'll debate it.
That's quite literally what his statement said. If you don't like my ideas, let's talk them out.
Exactly.
All right, so I want to ask you something that I think will sort of thread oh, you know what? I want to ask you one other little tech thing, and then something that I think that'll kind of bring us full circle here. So one of the things is, you see me do this all the time, where I have to publicly shame YouTube into either monetizing my video or making sure people aren't being unsubscribed or the rest of it. And then a certain amount of people will say, but Dave, you're a libertarian or whatever. You're not allowed to complain because you don't want the government involved, which is so idiotic because, of course, I'm using my voice as a citizen. That's what you're supposed to do. Exactly. Okay, putting that aside. Do you think there is some interesting legal mechanism if it was to be found out that they were treating traffic differently? So that's a little bit different than what we talked about earlier, was talking about content specifically. So you're saying this or that. Right. But what if they're actually turning the screws just based on not something you said, but they have sort of a broad sense that they don't want certain ideas getting out there?
I think there are contractual principles, equitable principles, and consumer protection principles that are in play. So once you induce someone to participate in your platform, and then you monetize their participation, to me, you have contractual obligations, equitable obligations. You can't have unjust enrichment. So you say, hey, if you participate, these are the rules, and as long as you abide by those rules, we'll make sure you share in the profits, for example, of monetizing your individual video. And if they don't do that, if they manipulate the algorithm, they misrepresent facts, they induce conduct and then only keep the profit for themselves or use it for a politicized purpose that's different than what they said, those are all consumer protection violations, equitable law violations, and legal violations, sometimes remedied by statute, sometimes remedied by common law. Well, there's no reason for big tech to be above the law.
Right. There might also be some legal thing related to their own board, right? I mean, if they're doing things that are not if they're not doing the most profitable thing, their board, I don't know exactly
correct.
The laws around
all the shareholders can take action. So there could be derivative suits by shareholders. They could go to the board, but they could also bring derivative legal claims against the institutions saying they're not promoting the best profit, they're creating undue legal risk and liability, they're not behaving in a manner consistent with their professional obligations and their contractual obligations to their own investors. And so they can also bring action. And in fact, the left, what I've told a lot of people is look at what the left has done between the 70s and 2000. You'll see a lot of legal roadmaps for how to go at what they're doing now. So they were some of on the apartheid campaigns in South Africa. They targeted different people using shareholder suits, using shareholder claims, using shareholder complaints to remedy that of people who were profiting from the apartheid system in South Africa. Why can't we do the same thing now, based on the same legal theories, same factual predicates as what's taking place here, which is inconsistent with their obligations and promises to people?
I guess partly, and this brings me to the last question, it's partly about bravery. You need citizens who are brave enough, you need lawyers who are brave enough, and they've created a system where everyone is afraid, because when I go out speaking to college campuses, or even I do Q&A when I'm doing stand-up or wherever I go, the question I get more than anything else is, I'm afraid to say what I think, and what should I do? And it's usually students that are saying, I want to get a grade because I want to get out, I want to get to grad school or whatever. And I always think, it's like, man, if everyone's thinking this, if we all just stopped acquiescing to it, we could actually change this thing like that. So my question to you is, and you mentioned your father before, but why are you willing to do this? Why are you willing to put your ass on the line? Where does this come from in you?
So it's two things. One, it's growing up. So grew up poor in the South, got a scholarship to private school, scholarship to Yale. When I was at Yale, they tried to get rid of poor students who were there, led a protest by leaving Yale in order to get them to reinstate their policies. And I saw there, I was like, I'm one kid, I'm 19 years old, I'm challenging all of Yale University, which wasn't exactly a small institution. And just by leaving the school and getting public attention for it, I got them to reverse their policies and protect poor students' same access that I had to rights to full financial aid, rights to be treated in a non-discriminatory manner in the application process. So at a young age, I learned one person can change the world. When I was a real little kid, I loved Medgar Evers. And Medgar Evers had this great quote where they asked him why he wasn't afraid to die. And he said, most men die 1,000 deaths every day. I'm only going to die once. And as a little kid, I was like, I want to be Medgar Evers. It's like, that is so powerful, that is so important, that is so influential. And you realize one person can make a difference. And when you realize one person can make a difference if they know it here and act on it here, then you realize that's the power, that's the passion. That's what leads you to want to change the world, not be afraid of. I've had rogue agents threaten me, IRS people put me under audit every other year whenever I win a case. I've had rogue judges threaten me. I've had people say that they're going to try to put me under bogus criminal investigation. I've had every smear campaign known to man. I've had bomb threats come in because of my Covington case representation. None of it concerns me, because if you understand that you really have the power as one person to make a real difference in the world, then other people will start to recognize that, and they'll act on their power, they'll voice their abilities, they'll use their capabilities to make a meaningful difference, and that's how the world changes, and that's how the world becomes a better place.
That is how you end an interview. Can we smoke one of those cigars you brought here? All right, we're done here. Follow Robert. I have a feeling you'll be back here.
Yeah.
I have a feeling it's going to happen. On Twitter, @Barnes_law.